In 1952, the Controllers Institute of America was a group of individuals who held similar posts and could then interact with each other to come up with solutions to problems.
This was an organization that was started in the United States. It started in 1931 and came to Canada in 1948.
It really hasn't changed in the 48 years that I've been involved, other than the name, now to Financial Executives Institute, and it's a broader organization. In its origins, it was primarily people who were doing the controllership function, but in the early 60s they changed it to the function of treasurer and financial vice president and that sort of thing.
The value of the organization and really the drive of the people that were the initial members in those early days took this thing from something that was nothing more than a chapter to an organization that focused on Canada, Canadian issues, and really built something that was far more than it originally represented.
Since its early beginnings in 1950, as the Toronto chapter of the Controllers Institute of America, the Toronto chapter of Financial Executives International is proud to celebrate 50 years of professional development and fraternity for all its members.
The first and foremost thing is it's a network opportunity. It gives you a chance to get to know your peers both in the city in which you work, but also in the industry within which you operate.
Once you get to a certain position within industry as a treasurer, controller, or CFO, there are a limited number of people within your own organization with whom you can share issues and discuss things. So other than your auditors, I think FEI provides that forum.
As a financial executive, you run into many problems that you think are unique, but in fact there are lots of people who have been through these problems and have come up with solutions.
And particularly if you're working in a small company like I work in, there's a lot of isolation. You're usually on your own, so it's nice to know that there's others out there that have similar challenges.
Transfer pricing was one issue that drove me to distraction, and certainly I called up other members and talked to them about it and what they were doing.
Talk to them about perhaps issues in their companies that you've come across for the first time. Share information, share knowledge, and friendship.
To be able to discuss issues with these individuals, people, for instance, such as Joe MacArthur, Bob Boone, Bill Hewitt, who's an expert on pensions, Tom Gunn, and Ernie Perkis. These individuals I'll know for the rest of my life, and I could not have met them in the same venues if I hadn't been for FEI.
50 proud years.
In the old days, it was good to be a member, and it was prestigious, and you got some value out of it, but in fact the value changed as we saw that we had a role to play.
It's amusing to recall one particular meeting, I think probably the first one at which a woman had attended, when the reception before the meeting entirely grouped around her, and the speaker of the evening even addressed her specifically rather than the rest of the audience. That seems odd now, but it may have helped to open the doors for women candidates. It did prompt several of the members, at least, to seek out women candidates for membership.
Some of the milestones were being in the Vancouver chapter when it appointed its first woman president in 1992, Denise Taylor Ellis, who has since become a very close friend and certainly had a lot to do with my joining the board of FEI at that time. And then coincidentally transferring to Toronto, totally unplanned, and the incoming president was Audrey McKinney. And in 1995, she took over as the first woman president of the Toronto chapter. In my thinking, those were very progressive moves for the FEI. It certainly showed that the men could support the women in a financial and senior executive sense, and showed some progressive thinking.
Well, during my short time as president, during my year and a half tenure, What I did was help our organization understand what core competency meant. And we reshaped how we were actually running the Toronto chapter. And what that meant was it became a lot easier and a lot more effective to be a volunteer. That, I think, is something that all our membership has welcomed, and frankly, I think the chapter is a lot better for it.
Financial Executives International provides its members many benefits, including a strong support network and financial education through seminars, courses, and information for its members.
I had access to people that I would not ordinarily have any contact with. And I think contact is the most important part.
Great source of information, which is I struggle with constantly. I have so much come across my desk that you just can't possibly keep up with it all. You have to synthesize it down and pick out the relevant, important information, and FEI does a good job of giving that to you.
There were some very useful individuals who presented to FEI over the years, useful in the sense that you walked away with something that allowed you to be a better manager in your own organization, which was really what it was all about.
I think it's helped give me perspective on a lot of industries that I might not otherwise be involved in on a day-to-day basis, because I'm involved in more of a social sort of way with the senior financial people and sharing some of their issues and problems.
Being a member of FEI really broadened my horizons, my perspective on being a financial executive.
With the world changing as fast as it is, we need to be very current in our jobs, and FEI is a source of that information.
Broadening my perspective and allowing me to be part of not an elite group, but certainly an exclusive group.
One of the things that we've done, and I think is good, is we've provided a network for our members who basically are in need of help when they're between jobs. It's when you're down like that that really an organization like this is even more valuable, if you will, than perhaps when you're working, because we are there to try and help get you back into the workforce. And that's something that when the time comes, you really appreciate that particular aspect of the group.
FEI is the ultimate networking organization. Join FEI not because there's something specific you want to learn. It does provide that need, certainly in Toronto, but it tries to offer a lot of variety of things to quite a diverse membership. So FEI's role is to be many things to many people, not just all things to everyone.
Throughout its history, FEI and its members have contributed to the soundness of business practices within Canada by lending expertise to governments and regulatory bodies, by providing insight into programs and regulations proposed or legislated, and how they affect our economy.
Over the years, the ministers of finance and other ministers in the government have paid attention to the FEI, because now we're speaking for roughly 1,500, I guess, these days in Canada. We were speaking for 400 when I joined the organization. But when you have a group of financial officers of large corporations speaking with one voice, you tend to listen, and you tend to try to take their advice.
The government does listen to FEI and in fact reaches out and solicits opinions from FEI members.
We're known as financial executives in the communities that we speak out in. So when we talk about a concern to the OSC or the Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants or to the finance departments of either our provinces or our federal government, we come with a known background, which is we're bean counters.
I think FEI makes sense because it really is, again, a voice for responsible financial accounting. It takes an issuer's point of view in terms of portraying economic events in the confines of accounting principles.
The FEI, I believe, is a key component in the equation, which is government, regulators, and then you have to have your industry voice as well. And without that industry voice, you're not going to have much balance.
It takes many, many voices to get a regulator or a legislator to make a change. We're one of those many voices. I believe we've spoken out on the right side of many issues and have contributed to different bodies listening to what needs to be done.
50 proud years.
I'd like to spend a moment just talking about the organization that evolved just about the time I was retiring from active business. It's been about 17 years now, and Doug Simpson, who was then the executive director of the FEI Canada, thought it would be a good idea if he got some of the retired members together and kept them in touch with each other. So we did, and a chap by the name of Graham Austin decided that the group needed a name, and he named it Feisters because the first 3 letters are FEI, and he said, we're a feisty bunch, so we'll call ourselves the Feisters. And if flattery is the sincerest form of compliment, Vancouver chapter asked us if they could continue the name in their chapter. So I think that was pretty significant.
This anniversary represents a milestone for the Toronto chapter. It marks 50 years of peer networking, professional development, and responsible advocacy. In pursuing these aims, this chapter has fostered lasting friendships. It's contributed to successful business careers, and it has positively influenced many legislative and regulatory initiatives. Clearly, our legacy values of kinship, scholarship, and leadership have served this chapter well.
FEI, a strong organization for a strong country.
Well, let's face it, when we look to the level of change, Canada is a pretty small country around the world, and Toronto, great place, but it's the provincial capital of the continent. We all tend to be very introspective. And what we get through the organization and what we get through the international links is a look-see at what's happening elsewhere. And when we learn and make ourselves both a stronger organization and we'll have stronger companies, and frankly, I think we'll have a stronger country.
I like to think that FEI is a living organism. It's changing, evolving all the time.
The future looks tremendously strong. I see a lot of interest in people joining FEI.
It's an extremely well-run, efficient, capable organization full of very, very good people.
These organizations essentially consist of primary decision makers. And not only the decision makers, but they are movers and shakers in their respective organization. And I think that is important for a young person today to join this kind of organization, to be an association with this kind of people.
FEI membership is a bargain. It's relatively inexpensive. The camaraderie is great, and you'll meet some interesting characters out there. And
it's been a great source of professional development and information.
The more sources of information that you can get, I think the more rewarding your career will be.
I feel good to be part of it. And in fact, a few people that I've mentioned that I belong to it have said, that's a really good organization to belong to.
I really have a personal appreciation for all of the work that's done by the committee members on my behalf and on behalf of the other members.
I'm very proud that I'm part of this organization.
FEI is evolving and will continue to evolve and find its niche where it can satisfy its members.
This anniversary celebration is an appropriate time to look back with both fondness and pride on the storied past of this chapter and its many wonderful members. It is not, however, a time to rest on our laurels. We must take advantage of this opportunity to recommit to our fundamental values and at the same time be open and prepared to make the changes necessary to adapt to today's realities. By following this formula, we can be confident in making the assertion that while the last 50 years were great, the best is yet to come for both this chapter and this organization.
Financial Executives International Toronto Chapter, celebrating 50 proud years.